Who doesn't love a good conspiracy theory? Doctor Who has confirmed several of them itself, such as the pyramids being built by aliens and mankind's evolution being guided by extraterrestrial forces. The show has also attracted conspiracy theories in real life too, covering everything from casting and production to plotlines and publicity. So let's crack out those tinfoil hats, because I'm Ellie for Who Culture, and here are the 10 biggest Doctor Who conspiracy theories. Number 10. The BBC deliberately leaked Rose. Although the 23rd of November is Doctor Who's overall anniversary, the 26th of March is remembered by many as the birthday of the revival. Except the show technically returned 3 weeks earlier when a copy of Rose turned up online. This wasn't just a rough cut, but the entire edited episode minus the Next Time trailer and updated theme music. As leaks go, it was pretty huge. Eventually, the culprit was unmasked as an employee of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. However, some people weren't convinced, suggesting that the leak was an elaborate publicity stunt orchestrated by the BBC themselves. This allegation was so prevalent that the BBC even came out and denied it, saying, quote, "We did absolutely not authorise any leak of Doctor Who. We would not have gone to all these lengths to track down the perpetrator if we had." Now, it's not hard to see why the BBC might have been tempted to do something like this, to prove the Doctor Who revival was big business, to move the narrative away from wobbly sets, and to generally get people talking, which it undoubtedly did. If the BBC really was responsible, we'll probably never know. But you can't put it past them. They are a sneaky bunch. Number 9. The Doctor and the Master are siblings. The relationship between the Doctor and the Master has always been a complex one. They disagree on many things, but nevertheless respect one another. They know each other better than anyone else in the universe. They've had beef since childhood, and always will do. If you didn't know better, you might say they were siblings. The idea that the Master is related to the Doctor has been alluded to and almost confirmed on several occasions. It was one of the plot twists considered for Jon Pertwee's final story, which, had it not been for Roger Delgado's untimely death, would have constituted one last showdown between the Third Doctor and the Master. Elsewhere, though the Master's final words are cut off in Planet of Fire, producer John Nathan Turner has suggested that he was going to call himself the Doctor's brother. The revived series has entertained the idea, but taken it less seriously. In A Sound of Drums, when Martha asks the Doctor if the Master is his secret brother, he tells her she's been watching too much TV. Well, I guess that tells us what Russell T Davis's not-so-subtle thoughts on this particular theory are. Number 8. The Demon's Secret Episode. Jon Pertwee's Doctor Who seasons largely consisted of 4-parters and 6-parters, the 2 exceptions being Season 7, which contained 3 7-parters, and Season 8, whose final instalment, The Demons, was only 5 parts long. But was this always the case? When the script book for the serial was published in 1992, it stated that episodes 5 and 6 were filmed, as opposed to episodes 4 and 5. The following year, fanzine Doctor Who Bulletin ran a story claiming The Demons was indeed meant to be a 6-parter. This supposed 6th installment saw the Master break free once again, having been captured by UNIT at the end of episode 5. I mean, considering that roughly 86% of classic Who is characters being captured and then escaping, that does sound about right. Ultimately, this is one conspiracy we can confidently debunk. The Doctor Who Bulletin article was an April Fool's joke, and the line in the script book was presumably a typo. Alas, no dark magic at play on this occasion. Number 7. Season 1's reshuffled episodes. It's not unusual for the episode order to change between production and transmission. As shot, Planet of the Ood was the 2nd episode of Series 4, but aired as the 3rd. Later, Night Terrors was meant to broadcast during Series 6A, but ultimately swapped places with The Curse of the Black Spot. When it comes to the 2024 season, no one can deny that Space Babies was always the opener, and The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death was always the finale. However, some fans are convinced that the intervening episodes were meant to go out in a different order. This conspiracy theory has its origins in The Devil's Cord. Specifically, the moment Ruby says she's from June-July 2024, despite having left home just 1 episode previously when it was Christmas 2023. Was this an intentional time skip, or a hint that The Devil's Cord was supposed to come later in the season, when Ruby could conceivably have been travelling with the Doctor for 6 months? There's also the fact that Maestro says the one who waits is almost here, which would have made a lot more sense if this episode aired closer to the finale. All that said, why would the powers that be even need to reshuffle the episodes in the first place? There's definitely something that feels off here, but what it all means, if anything, is anyone's guess. Number 6. David Burton is the Doctor. You've all heard of the alternate Ninth Doctors, Rowan Atkinson in the 1999 sketch The Curse of Fatal Death, and Richard E. Grant in the 2003 webcast Scream of the Shulker. But what about the alternate Eighth Doctor? In 1991, 2 years on from Doctor Who's cancellation and 5 years before the show returned with Paul McGann, unknown actor David Burton was allegedly cast as the next Doctor. The news broke not via a simple photo shoot or press release, but by Burton driving around in a car that had David Burton, the new Doctor Who, printed on the side. This was supposedly part of an attempt by an independent production to bring the show back to our screens. If Burton is to be believed, 2 pilot episodes were filmed and ultimately rejected by the BBC. There's just one problem. Aside from Burton's own account, there's zero record of these pilots ever having been produced. Rather conveniently, Burton claims that all photographs and footage had to be destroyed. Now, is Burton pulling a fast one, or did he really film these episodes and they've been lost to the mists of time? Well, either way, it's hilarious that he claims to have signed a confidentiality agreement and yet got this supposed huge secret printed on the side of his car. That's not what confidentiality means, my friend. Number 5. The BBC plants fake leaks. These days, it's a miracle if a Doctor Who episode makes it to transmission unspoiled. In recent years, details of the Timeless Child and Bi-Generation twists were both available to read months in advance, along with the entire plot of The Church on Ruby Road. The truth is, in spite of the production team's best efforts, things leak. Or is it because of them? Back in 2022, Russell T Davies admitted that they spread a few red herrings regarding the identity of the next Doctor, stating that, quote, "There's been a few false stories and false tales, and we placed a few posts ourselves, a couple of misleading things, and we're very pleased that kind of worked. Does this mean the BBC was responsible for the Ollie Alexander rumour, or the report about Hugh Grant? And if we want to get really conspiratorial, what if Russell T Davies has deliberately leaked accurate information too, to forewarn fans of upcoming developments? He's since insisted the Bi-Generation leak was nothing to do with him, but then again, that's what he would say. Maybe it's all about setting expectations and getting fans talking, or maybe Bad Wolf Studios needs to improve its security. Number 4. Missing episodes aren't actually missing. At the time Doctor Who was created, television was largely thought of as having a limited shelf life, with programmes holding no further value once broadcast. Combined with the cost of buying and storing videotape, broadcasters regularly exterminated their shows once they'd aired, and though many of these lost episodes have since been rediscovered, 97 are still missing at this present time. At least that's the official line. For one thing, some lost stories are known to exist in the hands of private collectors, who for whatever reason are reluctant to return them to the BBC. Then there are the territories that have yet to be explored. One unusual conspiracy suggests that former president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, had been sitting on a stash of missing episodes but had banned the BBC from entering the nation. And then there's the theory that the episodes have already been found and the BBC is simply holding them back so they can stagger home media releases and make us double dip by buying the animated reconstructions first. It does seem highly unlikely, but then again, if there's one thing big corporations like, it's easy money. Whatever the case, here's hoping more missing episodes are returned soon. Number 3. Vinda was a Captain Jack replacement. Doctor Who's 2021 San Diego Comic-Con panel promised appearances from all of the main cast, plus a very special surprise guest. Some fans believed this to be John Barrowman, who had returned to the show as Captain Jack Harkness the previous year. In the end, it turned out to be Game of Thrones star Jacob Anderson, who had been cast as Doctor Who's next spacefaring hero, Vinda, in Flux. There were comparisons between the two characters from the off, not least Vinda being a roguish freelance space traveller with no quarrels about using guns. This led many fans to believe that Jack was originally set to appear in Flux and that Vinda was a hastily conceived replacement. The conspiracy goes that Barrowman was sacked as a result of the allegations of him exposing himself on set during RTD1, which resurfaced in April 2021. Flux still had a couple of months filming to go at that point, so the timelines might add up. Much more convincing, however, is the theory that he was physically unable to appear due to being locked down at his home in Palm Springs during the COVID-19 pandemic. Considering Jack was reintroduced to the Whoniverse with much much fanfare in 2020, it would have made a lot of sense for him to be in flux, and his weird off-screen exit in Revolution of the Daleks only adds fuel to the fire. Was another departure scene filmed, perhaps one where he didn't depart at all but stayed behind on the TARDIS, only for the current scene to be thrown together when his planned appearances in Flux fell through? Due to the controversy surrounding Barrowman these days, we might never know for sure, but some would say the evidence speaks for itself. Number 2. Doctor Who's viewing figures are inflated. Doctor Who's viewing figures have been recorded throughout its history, and the stats are always contextual. For instance, the show's highest rated episode, City of Death Part 4, was seen by 16.1 million people, but this figure was only possible because of an ITV strike, which meant that it was airing against no opposition. And though Doctor Who's viewing figures are not what they once were, with roughly 3 to 4 million tuning into Season 1 compared to 7 to 8 million averages achieved by Series 1 to 8, TV viewing figures are down across the board, and the show is still charting in the top 20 programmes in the UK. Even so, certain corners of the internet insist that the current ratings are inflated, which by any measure is a ridiculous assertion. For starters, it's not the BBC who produces the figures. It's the independent organisation known as BARB, which would have, and let me just check my notes here. Oh yeah, that's right, nothing to gain from lying about the viewing figures of one show. And if they were somehow inflated, then surely Doctor Who would be the absolute biggest thing on UK television, instead of hovering around the mid-teens on the weekly chart. Ultimately, the biggest conspiracy here is that viewing figures matter as much as they do. Doctor Who generates so much value in other areas, like merchandise for example, that the number of eyeballs watching is only one part of the overall equation. Number 1. The Nation Estate Agreement. Like many other classic Who creations, the copyright of the Daleks rests with the writer who invented them, in this case Terry Nation. As such, the BBC isn't allowed to use the Daleks without the permission of the Terry Nation estate. It's well known that this agreement caused problems in the early 2000s, and the Daleks very nearly didn't appear in the 2005 revival at all. But due to their prominence in the years since, fans have speculated that an additional clause was added at that point, stating that the Daleks must show up at least once in every set of episodes, including festive specials and minisodes. Now, to give this conspiracy theory some credit, that has actually happened in every season or season equivalent so far, even when there hasn't been a Dalek story. The 2009 specials had a Dalek appearance in The Waters of Mars, Series 6's was in The Wedding of River Song, 2016's was in the Bill Potts introduction video Friend from the Future, and the 60th anniversary specials had Destination Skaro. Now, 2024 hasn't had anything yet, but there's still plenty of time. Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat have both gone on record to say that this Dalek agreement isn't real. But then again, why would they confirm the details of a confidential contract? Basically, if a Dalek pops up in Joy to the World, we won't fall out of our chairs. And that concludes our list, but for more out there theories, why not check out 10 crazy Doctor Who fan theories people actually believed. In the meantime, I've been Ellie for Who Culture, and in the words of River Song herself, goodbye, sweeties.